for all today. Through all the pain, all the way, the fight to the light, the love, mixing in and out the way.
What's going on, everybody? This is Sleeper Nation coming back with the post 4th of July episode. I know that's not something you're into, Sheahan. Of course, you being the #1 Australian analyst who's currently living in the UK. Man, how you doing? How's your tea, by the way?
I'm good, man. I decided to show some solidarity with my American brothers by going to my local supermarket, buying a couple of packs of tea and throwing it in my local river, and in a grand act of defiance for you. So, you know, do you still have all your fingers, or are you sort of Jason Pierre-Pauling it?
I still have all 10 of mine. I actually didn't do any fireworks this year. I just watched other people do theirs because apparently the price of fireworks have skyrocketed, and I decided, nah, I'm good on that.
Nice one. Hey, have you ever seen that clip of all the fireworks at once going off in San Diego?
Yes, yeah. That was one hell of a show.
Gets me every year. It's like the obviously, as you say, it's a 4th of July, not a massive deal over here or even in my life, but it's a bit like watching Christmas Vacation at Christmas time. I watch that video around 4th of July every year.
That's one of them. And then there's always the Terry on the wheelchair. I don't know if you know that one. The lad in the wheelchair, he can't move fast enough out of the way. There's always that. That always gets me every single year.
Fantastic.
But of course, 4th of July has passed. And if you are on Twitter, then you would know about Scott Fishbowl League and how massive of a celebration that is when draft time is upon us. I wouldn't know what that is because my league is still, it's been 48 hours. We're still in the second round. I hate slow drafts. You know what? This is going to segue into my rant of the day of how much I hate slow drafts and how stupid I think they are. If you are unable to do a draft, pick in about 30 minutes, you shouldn't be doing fantasy football. If a slow draft is how you have to do fantasy football, I'm sorry. Like, it's just not for you.
I'm glad you've brought this up because this has been basically my life for the last day and a bit as well. We're only halfway through the 3rd round in the ELO division. And I don't know if you're a fan of your Marvel movies, but if you are, you'll know that so many of the villain origin stories are tied to Tony Stark. And I feel like this is my villain origin story because way back when I was still a fledgling fantasy football player, my exposure was basically watching the league. I started listening to a rival lesser podcast called The Fantasy Footballers. At the time, they were still quite small, and now they're the biggest fantasy podcast out there, give or take. They're in my division in the Scott Fishbowl, and they have taken upwards of 6 hours for every pick so far. And I know there's 3 of them, and I know that sort of Jason might have a long-term head injury, but come on, guys, you've got to be quicker than that. But I feel like this is my villain origin story because my fantasy football origin is so tied to them, and now they've become the villains of my life as I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. I haven't made an actual live pick yet. All of mine have been off the pre-drafted list of players because it's the middle of the night here and I'm fast asleep. I wake up to Twitter messages from one of the guys in the league going, and Sheahan Solo's taken this player, that player, and the other player. For reference, it's Dak Prescott, Alvin Kamara, and Devontae Adams so far, so I'm not too unhappy with it. But still, I'd like to make an active pick at some point this year.
Yeah, everybody was talking about their 4th round pick. Meanwhile, I was at 102. I couldn't believe it.
Really? Who have you got so far? You're in the best bowl. They're the best bowl even.
Yeah, I took Dalvin Cook. I wanted a running back. I always secure a running back. I took Dalvin Cook, and then for the next pick after that, I had fun with it. I was so over it because of how long I had to wait. I took Kyle Pitts. I was like, screw it. 2nd round, Kyle Pitts. 3rd round, I think I'm going to take like Ryan Tannehill or something like that. Nice.
Well, we had 4 tight ends go off the board in the first 15 picks with Kelsey was 102.
Yeah.
Darren Waller was 108. George Kittle was 110 and Kyle Pitts was 203. So has meant Jonathan Taylor fell to the 206, and I heard he was the 101 in one league.
That is gnarly. For everybody that is listening and curious, it is a super flex league and tight end premium. They get an extra half point per reception and an extra half point per first down. So they're definitely a little bit more valuable than the average tight end and probably more than a receiver right now. Yeah, like you are correct. Travis Kelce went 204 for me, and Patrick Mahomes went 102. Kelce went out 104 for me. And then, Mahomes went 0-2, and then all the tight ends went right after that. As soon as the first tight end went out, then they all went, and I felt like I had to take Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, I was listening to Scott talk on a lesser rival pod in advance of the draft, and Kelsey's ADP was 104. I was hoping he might slip to 109, but obviously people are all in on tight end premium. Apparently he went 101 in the Red Hot Chili Peppers division. So, people are all in on it. I think, however, tight end premium, it's caused people to do some weird things. I think, I know you're a man who enjoys just the margarita pizza of fantasy football, just as fewer settings as possible. Yep. But I feel like tight end premium is making people do weird things that they otherwise shouldn't. Keep it simple would be my draft advice. Don't get too cute. Don't reach on like a Logan Thomas over Michael Thomas or something like that. That'd just be dumb. But I will ask you this, and I know you're excited. Will you be flexing a kicker, multiple kickers?
I'll definitely think about it. I'll definitely be thinking about it.
Yeah, I did a mock the other day. I took the first kicker off the board with Yippee-ki-yay Justin Tucker, but, he was the top kickers in the league. I think your boy Young Hui Koo and Jason Sanders were like wide receiver 3-4 caliber. So, nice little advantage. I'm going to be looking at picking up some kickers in those mid rounds.
Yeah, kickers like Young Hoku was putting up RB1 numbers while he was kicking those little 50-yarders, and I was more terrified of seeing Young Hoku on the enemy roster than seeing like Dalvin Cook, Kamara, Diggs, because a kicker position, he's going to put at 15. That's frustrating.
You're the kicker whisperer. Who do you like this year? If you got a little tip for all the boys and girls at home.
The Titans kicker, I'm not, his name eludes me at this point.
Ryan Suckup.
There we go. He's a little interesting.
Is it Ryan Suckup?
I think so. But
I don't know. They had the ghost last year, didn't they?
It's still Young Hoku. I think he's going to be number one. That offense, they have an issue with touchdowns, but they have no issue moving the ball down the field. So I still think he's probably going to be the go-to kicker to go after.
Well, don't go out drafting Ryan Suckup expecting him to be the Titans kicker. Their current kicker at the top of their depth chart is Tucker McCann.
Better name.
With Blake Hoybiel on the roster there too. I'm not sure who I like. I want someone with a bit of a leg because I think it's fractional scoring. So you want guys who are potting them from 44, 45. I like go nuts for Will Lutz.
Yeah, Lutz, I think he'd be a pretty good one. Joey Sly, the Panthers kicker, we might talk about him in a bit.
The Sly dog.
Yeah, because right now they got 3 good wide receiver options, or 2 good, I should say, wide receiver options, and a quarterback that's questionable. So I definitely think with McCaffrey's help that we would have moved the ball down the field. It's just, can they score the touchdown?
Yeah. Well, I think I'll keep an eye out for Joey Sly. They were getting him to try kicks from everywhere. Last year, like from really long range. So I don't think you get penalised for those, but if you can dob the short ones. In fact, at the last live game I went to, I'm pretty sure it was Joey Sly, had an attempt at a free kick, which was, I think, the first time it had been attempted in about 4 years. So it was exciting. I nearly got to see the first completed free kick in about 9, but sadly it didn't go through.
Yeah, he missed. Yeah, I remember that one. I think that was a pretty bad miss, not just a miss. If I remember correctly.
It fell short by a long way. This is also the game that Jameis Winston threw a pick on the first pass of the game, and I think he ended up throwing 4.
That's definitely...
That's quite a good game, though.
That's definitely something Jameis Winston would do. And I think he still threw maybe for 5 touchdowns that game, if I also remember.
It was an absolutely ridiculous game. I won tickets in a promotion on Facebook and ended up sitting basically on halfway at field level. It was awesome.
I'm pretty jealous, actually, but of course,
and I got a Jameis Winston jersey out of it too.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want that. That's actually more insulting than a prize. But for this episode, of course, we're going to be talking about the NFC South, which is, of course, the Falcons, Panthers, Tampa Bay, and then the unloved New Orleans Saints. Or loved. We don't know. Depends who you talk to. But of course,
who dat?
Who dat? I don't know anymore. Scott gone fishing. Is this a segment?
Well, yeah, it was originally the segment Gone Scott Fishing. For some inside baseball for the listeners, we had a guest lined up, your favourite analyst from SleeperWire, other than us two handsome folks, the Walmart Josh Allen himself, Justin Dodds. So I had a whole segment called I Can't Believe It's Not Josh Allen. And then he had to bail to help his dad move house. So last minute we were going to do Scott Fishbowl Chat, which we've already done. So, we're playing around. We're playing fast and loose. This is a jazz podcast.
Yeah.
But that does mean we can roll straight into Nader's wise words of wisdom.
Before I get into that, earlier before we hit record, you said, oh yeah, we have Dodds coming on. I said, who's that? And then you go, Walmart Josh Allen. I'm like, oh, that guy. That guy. Okay, that makes sense. But all right.
I really don't think he likes the moniker, but that just makes it better as far as I'm concerned.
That's it. He is Walmart Josh Allen. It's like Michael Strahan with his gap teeth, or Han Solo, the actor, for being Han Solo. I know he doesn't like that, but I don't know him for anything else other than being Han Solo. But that's it. Like,
not even Indiana Jones.
No, he's Han Solo, and he has to deal with it. I don't know his real name, but it's Han Solo.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's Harrison Ford.
Oh, okay, I don't like that car either. So that's too bad. He's Han Solo.
I know you're more of a Subaru man.
True. All right, so remember, everybody, when you have a job interview, go in with a full erection to let them know how excited you are for that job.
That's great advice. I actually have a job interview tomorrow, so obviously it's over Zoom, but I'll make sure they know that I'm pitching a tent, that I've achieved tumescence, that I'm that excited about it.
Okay. So people want enthusiasm, and what's more enthusiasm than pitching a tent?
That's that's true. That's it's certainly a bold move in an interview. That's for sure.
All righty. So I'm gonna leave the floor to you.
Every 2 minutes, a fantasy draft pick is made by AutoDraft. We can eliminate auto drafting in our lifetime, but we need your help to do it. At Draft Night Out, we're on a mission to eradicate auto drafting before it claims more victims this draft season. For just $30, we will match you with a team that would otherwise fall to auto drafting, and put you in a league with other passionate, charitable people who hate auto drafting as much as you, in a live draft in Canton, Ohio on August 14th. But we're not just about eradicating auto drafting. We also believe in finding homes for exclusive t-shirts and NFL memorabilia. And that's why we'll also give you an exclusive t-shirt and chances to win signed balls, jerseys, helmets, and much, much more. So find it in your heart today to save a team from being auto-drafted. Go to draftnightout.com to get your ticket. Draft Night Out is brought to you by SleeperWire, Eat Sleep Fantasy, Draft Party USA, and my friends, Prestige Sports Memorabilia. Dig deep, open your heart.
For somebody who's Scott Fishbowl timer, they ran out at 101. I think each pick is 8 hours long. You have 8 hours to make a pick, and they took all 8 hours, and they didn't even make the pick. It expired.
Wow.
The 2 minute thing, it really that was kind of like salt in the wound right there. Every 2 minutes, huh? I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, it's like that classic. Every 60 seconds, a minute passes in Africa.
True. That's facts.
Yeah, save that for your wise words of wisdom.
That was it right there. I don't think I could get any better than that.
Well, we can roll out of the promo for this week. Hopefully our producers are listening and they can drop some Sarah McLachlan behind that because, I couldn't read it and sing I Will Remember You. So we can just roll straight into the NFC South. And we can remember not the Titans, but the Atlanta Falcons. How'd they do last season?
4-12. Pretty disappointing season for how good that offense is. But 16th in points scored, 18th in yards gained, 5th in passing, 27th in rushing yards. Todd Gurley led with 78 yards, 9 tutties. Calvin Ridley, the legend, 1,374 yards and 9 touchdowns. Matt Ryan throwing for 4,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. I think, ironically, they both came against their... I think 8 of those 11 interceptions went against the Raiders and the Saints. He doesn't do well against the Saints. Yeah, Matt Ryan's always a bench when he goes against the Saints.
Yeah, well, he gets them twice a year. And, maybe this year with the Saints, as we'll roll on to, just having absolutely no money to spend. And even without Julio Jones, maybe this is the year that he carves them up.
I wouldn't put money on it because as much as I hate the Saints, they are very well coached and well disciplined. They will always be a good team as long as Sean Payton's that coach.
Yeah, definitely. Kevin James as Sean Payton as their coach.
Exactly. So, of course, right now we have Arthur Smith, first season after 2 seasons as the Titans head coach. Right now, of course, we know Julio Jones is gone. Alex Mack, their center, gone to San Francisco. Todd Gurley's gone. Brian Hill's gone. Matt Schaub, that legend, is gone. Edo Smith, he is definitely a legend, definitely gone. Cordell Patterson has been assigned. AJ McCarron, he's a legend upon legends. He is there. Mike Davis, of course, he's going to be a heavily talked about player in the upcoming moments. Kyle Pitts, of course, we will be talking about him. But other than that, I don't want to say this is relatively straightforward because Calvin Ridley, he has been known to produce fantasy points without Julio Jones. I think that's the comparison people want to make with him is Juju Smith-Schuster, because with Antonio Brown was there, Juju was just lighting it up. And then, of course, once Antonio Brown leaves, he is not only underwhelming, but immensely disappointing. And then I think, I don't want to say a lot of people are kind of putting Calvin Ridley in that category, but I definitely think it's unfair if people do.
I'm currently working on an article and reading up on some Batman lore to talk about whether, Calvin Ridley as Robin can be Batman, or is he Jean-Paul Valley or is he Dick Grayson? I mean, we've seen him perform without Julio Jones and do quite well. I think the stat that was floating around at the time was Ridley's numbers without Jones were excellent. Ryan's numbers without Jones, not so much. So I wonder if that's going to be the concern. Personally, I think, and I think we talked about this at the time on the, would have been the AFC South episode, because the trade happened around that time, is that all of that volume that people thought was going to go to AJ Brown, I can see those similar numbers being with Calvin Ridley, that he might get somewhere in the realm of 170 targets and catch 140 balls. And at that rate, you're looking at potentially the wide receiver 1, if he can indeed continue to show that he can be a force at receiver in the NFL.
That's 170 targets. That's a lot of targets.
It's 10 a week.
It's 10 a week. I don't know. I think I'd go with around 150 targets. Which isn't that much difference. I'd go probably about 100 catches. I think I definitely think he does better than he did last year, which, of course, with an extra game, you would expect that as long as he stays healthy. But what's his ADP right now?
Well, he's quite early on. I think he's the wide receiver 8 at the moment. Let me just check to be sure. Yeah, he's the wide receiver 8. He's going at the 2-3 turn. So if we're doing some either or, and in fact, I'm pretty sure he's still on the board here in Scotty Fishbowl. But would you rather Calvin Ridley or Justin Jefferson?
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley or AJ Brown?
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley or DK Metcalf?
Calvin Ridley.
And, I know what you're going to say because you're a real RB nuff, but I assume you would want Mixon, Akers, Dobbins, Swift, and Harris ahead of Ridley.
I'll take Ridley over Harris.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably about right. This is a weird either or because it's not just either or with the players around him. It's the either or of how you set your team up. Yeah. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable with Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 1. I think if I was going a heavy wide receiver team, which we might talk about in a couple of weeks' time, I'd be happy with Ridley as my wide receiver 2, but it doesn't fill me with confidence. But that being said, I think he finishes as a top-end wide receiver. It's just not... doesn't look sexy. It's not like walking into a job interview with a raging erection. I mean, that's real sexy.
It really is.
This is walking into a job interview without a raging erection, which might be better for you, but just lacks the same sort of, dare I say, big dick energy.
Yeah, it's just not girthy enough for you to handle. I mean, so if you want Calvin Ridley as your wide receiver 2, you'd probably be taking something like Tyreek Hill in the first round, and then maybe an RB in the second round, and then on the you said he's going around the third turn?
He's the 2-3 turn. So what's that? That's the 101. So you'd be walking away with probably McCaffrey, and then maybe the turn is like AJ Brown and Calvin Ridley, which I could live with. I think that's a pretty good way to start your team, particularly in one quarterback.
That's not bad at all. If it's a one quarterback league, I wouldn't be too mad at it. I'd probably go McCaffrey and then another RB. I'd probably take Akers then Ridley.
Yeah, that makes sense. I quite like Akers.
Yeah.
The more I sort of think about him as an option, and the more I've had him in live and mock drafts, I'm like, yeah, actually, this is a guy I could get behind.
So where's is not DK Stefan Diggs? Is he far away from Calvin Ridley?
So we talked about Diggs last week.
Yes.
And if you recall, you were Diggs out for Harambe and wanted him over everyone.
Yes.
So Diggs is currently the wide receiver 3. He is basically the 1-2 turn in one quarterback leagues. In 2 quarterback leagues, they're a bit closer. One's at the top of... he's at the back end of the second round, and then Ridley's at the top end of the third. Has your thoughts on the two of them changed over the week?
No, I assumed they would be a little bit closer paired together. I didn't know that there would be a significant whole round basically difference between the two.
Yeah, the wide receiver grouping where it starts getting tight is about the wide receiver 10 to wide receiver 14. You've still got that kind of second, third tier. I'd probably have them as third tier running backs.
Okay.
Dispersed in here, and this is why, usually I'm a build around wide receivers type. That this year I feel like I really have to go RBs heavy early because this kind of middle class of RB just doesn't exist. Because you're having to take them with early picks, where it does mean that you might get some value as receivers slip, like your Calvin Ridley. And in fact, he's a guy that may slip because there's guys behind him with a bit more name recognition for your standard football watcher, if you like. Not an informed football watcher like you, dear listener, but like guys like Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, Allen Robinson, Mike Evans. They're all going later, and potentially with some name recognition, they jump up ahead of Ridley. And you could maybe snaffle him a little bit later.
The problem with Calvin Ridley is that I don't want to put him with the juju and having the juju effect where you think he's just going to get an overabundance of targets without the main guy there, that he just somehow gets elevated. I am a little bit worried that he does not perform to the standard and expectation of what people want.
It's slightly different to me with Juju. It's certainly the world that we're living in with Juju at the moment because, he's got 2 other receivers around him fighting for targets. Calvin Ridley has Russell Gage, who has made some nice plays, but it really is Ridley. I think Kyle Pitts is going to end up being the wide receiver 2. I'm sure we're going to roll onto him shortly. I don't see him lining up in line too much this year. I think he's going to play in the slot and outside as much as anywhere. So I really think that this is a case of there is no one else to throw to. And Matt Ryan, we know, is going to be throwing the ball as much as just about anyone in the league. And their defense is really no better than it was last year. They're going to have to throw to stay in games. We know that Arthur Smith runs a good play-action game, and I'm sure we'll roll on to Mike Davis too, but, a key part of play-action is having someone to throw to.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of Kyle Pitts, let's talk about him for a little bit. What's his ADP looking like?
Far too high.
Far too high?
Just off the top of my head. I believe in Kyle Pitts. I think he's going to be an excellent NFL player, but I think the hype is just too out of control at this point. I get it in Dynasty. I thought about drafting the 103 in a league. The only reason I couldn't is because he went at 102. And that's a single tight end, no tight end premium league. And I was like, I'm not going to get a share of this guy anywhere else. I won't pick high enough. But at this point in redraft, I don't see why you're taking the risk on Pitts at the 46th name off the board. So back into the 4th round, ahead of Mark Andrews, who has at least proved himself to be an elite NFL tight end. In fact, I was talking to a couple of our writers at Sleeper before jumping on the pod tonight, and we were talking about how people are sleeping on Mark Andrews, and he really could and should be ranked with those top 3 elite tight ends, and has instead been jumped by Pitts and has sort of been lumped in with like the TJ Hawkinsons of the world.
I think the issue with Pitts is he is jumping into a perfect storm. You know, the lack of targets, bad defense, they're going to be passing a lot, you know, lack of potential competition around him, good quarterback. You know, there's a lot to like with Kyle Pitts' situation that he's jumping into. And a lot of people are rooting for him because there's just such a lack of talent in the tight end position, or a lack of fantasy tight end in the, you know, in the tight end position, that people are just kind of rooting for him to succeed, to give people some hope, you know, to get some points in that tight end, to the point where we don't have to add tight end premiums in leagues to add some value in that position.
Yeah, I want Pitts to succeed. As you say, I think it is the perfect storm. I think he's going to get targets. And, you know, as I alluded to, I don't think he's going to play too much tight end. They've got Hayden Hurst there, who's one of the better inline blockers for the position, who can play that traditional tight end role and was reasonably successful for parts of last season. I think we see Pitts as an outside receiver. I think we see him in the slot. I think they try and get the mismatch and, you know, make the most of this guy that they took it 4th off the board, when they could have set themselves up for the future with a Justin Fields or a Mac Jones. But I don't want a bar of him this year in redraft. Absolutely not. If he maybe slips in a home league, absolutely. I could see the value of him in best ball. But again, I just think there are better options at tight end later on. And, you know, we're going to see some ceiling from Pitts, but I think we're going to see some serious floor as well this year.
Well, let's see. Hayden Hurst, like you mentioned earlier, he was a little bit disappointing last year. I think a lot of people, I don't want to say overhyped him, because that was definitely on one of his little tight end trains to make sure that I went out for him in redraft leagues. But he was definitely disappointing and a little bit underwhelming. I think people are going to be falling for the same trap that Kyle Pitts might be in. But with the lack of talent in the tight end position, I think he's still going to be one of the top tight ends this year. But I definitely do agree with you. I think he will be a little bit overdrafted.
So if we have a look at last year's stats, let's take Evan Engram. Do we think Kyle Pitts has more than 63 catches?
Yeah, I don't think that's too hard.
Do we think he has more than 650 yards?
Yeah, I don't think that'll be too hard either.
And Engram only scored once. I'm going to set the over and under at 6 touchdowns.
Under.
Yeah, so how many yards do you reckon? About 850? Do you think he goes a little bit higher than that?
850 is about fair.
Yep. I mean, that would put him basically the same season as Chris Godwin had last year.
Yeah, and Chris Godwin had a phenomenal year.
Yep.
But Chris Godwin did miss a handful of games. Chris Godwin, I think he had his little finger surgery. He missed a couple of games, and then I think he had an ankle injury. Missed a couple of games. So, I mean, Chris Godwin, if he played the full 16 game season, I think he eclipses 1,000 yards.
I mean, well, let's look at Hawkinson as well. He had 67 catches, 723 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That feels about right. I think we're going to see better from Hawkinson this year. We'll get to him in the NFC North episode, obviously. I can't justify the cost of Pitts there for me.
He's the shiny new toy, and people want to play with the new toy. Unfortunately, sometimes the new toy just isn't better than the old one.
Yeah, potentially, but, you know, sign me up in a few years' time. Particularly if he breaks out this year, like, good for him. And I'll look like an idiot, but also won't look like an idiot because I haven't overdrafted him. So
that's completely fair. So let's talk about Mike Davis for a hot second. What's his ADP? He's hard to gauge.
He's the RB36 at the moment, the early 9th.
Whew.
In saying that, I don't think you can get him in the 9th round. I think he's probably going in the 6th, 7th.
Yeah, once people start seeing him, they start getting closer to the draft time. They start evaluating the RBs, especially the 0 RB people. Shout out to Hoos for his consistent 3rd place. endings, he's definitely going to be a top target for 0 RB leagues. And if at that point you're going to be reaching for him, I could see him going from early to 6th. And I'd rather have Mike Davis over Kyle Pitts. Is that a little too nutty to say?
No, probably not. I mean, you can have both. They're not really going around each other. But, Davis is going later than Zach Moss. He's going slightly ahead of Damian Harris, slightly ahead of Michael Carter. I would rather Mike Davis than all of those guys. But in fact, we can do some classic either or. Do you want Davis or David Johnson?
Davis.
Yeah, see, Johnson's going a round and a half earlier. Davis or James Conner?
Both are. See, James Conner is on a better team, better situation, but it's James Conner.
We are going to come on to the NFC West. I think there's some value in James Conner this year.
Yeah.
Spoilers for that episode. But I also want Davis, all of these guys, because I was looking at their depth chart today going, putting the show notes together. Who else they got? I'm a big rat for Javian Hawkins, so was our man Jake Seeley when he was on. But Hawkins is not going to be a workhorse guy. He's a scat back. He's a Darren Sproles. He's a James White type. So, I think it really is Mike Davis or bust. I don't know if maybe they bring in a Frank Gore, bring back Todd Gurley, something like that. But really, this is Davis's backfield, and I don't know if they have the coin to bring in anyone else.
Right now, earlier you mentioned Arthur, the little head coach. He's a huge play action type guy, and
Arthur.
And if you can't do play action if you can't run the ball, somebody needs to be there to run it, and they have to pound it efficiently and effectively in order to get a play action going. And Mike Davis will be the good, solid back that has the toughness, has a little bit of a burst speed, and has the ability to at least make a defense respect the run just a little bit for play action to work out. I'm pretty in on Mike Davis.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more in on him I am. Hey, question without notice of sorts. Quiz question without notice.
Okay.
Other than Mike Davis or the aforementioned Javian Hawkins, name any of the 6 players who are currently listed on the Falcons depth chart at running back.
This is more for fun, but I'm sure Cordell Patterson's listed as an RB.
He is, although Arthur has said that he's probably going to go back to playing wide receiver.
God, okay, let's see. They lost all the other RBs. Brian Hill's gone. Ito Smith's gone. That means they have to have some unsigned free agencies type players on their roster that I couldn't name off the top of my head right there.
You got Kodri Ollison and Tony Brooks-James. I thought Brooks-James looked okay in a game that he played possibly last year, possibly the year before. But a name to watch, I suppose, if you're into your UDFA long shots other than Hawkins, is Caleb Huntley. He's more of a vertical guy. He is very slow. But, he's a big power back, run between the tackles. I could see him making the roster as that between the tackles guy, particularly if Patterson is going to go back to playing receiver and basically kick returner. Whether there's any value there, who's to say? But deep dynasty roster, deep taxi squad, I think you could do worse than Caleb Huntley.
Mm-hmm. So before we move on from the Falcons, is there any closing remarks? Anybody else that you want to talk about real fast?
Let's talk about Matt Ryan and what we expect from him without Julio Jones. We talked about that, his numbers are not as good, but where are we ranking Matt Ryan? He's sort of been a perennial QB1. Do we think he's still got that ceiling, or is he sort of a week-to-week streamer now?
A week-to-week streamer based on the matchups and situation. Right now, he doesn't have the weapons for me to sit there and go, oh, yeah, he's a reliable streamer at this point.
Yeah, he's currently sandwiched in ADP, or quarterback ADP, between Ryan Tannehill, who I'm sure we'd both much rather have.
Of course.
Justin Fields is just below him, obviously has a higher upside, but I would say a similarly bad offense, potentially.
That's fair.
Or Kirk Cousins, who, is Kirk Cousins, but has the better weapons around him.
I'd much rather have Kirk Cousins.
Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield.
Danny Dimes.
I feel like if I'm having to make this decision, I'm a really bad fantasy football manager.
And Wentz.
Wentz. No, I'd rather have Matt Ryan than him.
Yeah, I'm going to steer clear of. I'm going to steer clear of Matt Ryan. Although they do play in a dome, I still believe in Calvin Ridley, and I'm sure. I think we might see Ryan put up the same sort of volume, but maybe not the touchdowns, and maybe an increase in picks too.
Well, the problem is if that's the case, that's not very confident.
No, and I suppose we should probably hit on Russell Gage. He's a nice late round target. He showed a bit towards the back end of last year.
Yes, but he was also very inconsistent. He was kind of the guy that he would blow up while no one was starting him. Once you put him in your lineup, he would kind of have a dud game. You take him out, he does good. You put him back in, has a dud game.
Well, he had 72 catches, 786 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
To circle back, is that what we're expecting from Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, that's pretty good. For a tight end, that's phenomenal.
So I think there's something to like here with Gage. He had 100 targets, and he's going very late. He's going in, your kicker DST territory if you're playing with those. He's the wide receiver 58, the 12-13 turn, and for a guy who might sit on your bench for a couple of weeks early in the season, it's not going to. You're not going to lose sleep over needing to drop him. I think that's a pretty good option.
That's a very good option. I think he's in the tier of not good enough to start, but not bad enough to drop. He's in an awkward situation where he's just going to be riding your bench. And then, you might be able to put him in. Injuries happen, bye weeks happen, and, you find yourself putting him in. And then, of course, you'll be hoping for about 50 yards and a touchdown. But he's definitely worth a draft. Definitely worth it.
I'm going to say that Gage has more 100-yard games than Kyle Pitts does this year.
That's fair. I give that about a 50-50 percentage.
Yep. I mean, there is no one else on this receiver chart that I think's even really worth mentioning. I mean, they drafted Frank Darby. He'll probably get his chance, but he's nothing special. But right at the bottom of their depth chart is Tajay Sharp, and I think he could well be their number 3 receiver by the end of the season.
That's fair, but at number 3, I don't expect too much out of you.
Yeah, I've got no interest in him either.
No.
It was just a name that popped up when I was looking at their depth chart. I thought, oh yeah, Tajay Sharp.
All right, so the Carolina Panthers with a disappointing 5-11 season, 24th in points scored, 21st yards gained, 18th in passing, 21st in rushing yards. Definitely matches their record with their offensive rankings. Mike Davis led the team, the backup running back. Yes, you heard me right. 642 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. He had 1,000 yards from scrimmage and 8 total touchdowns, so 2 receiving. DJ Moore had 1,200 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. Robbie Anderson had 1,000 yards with 3 tutties. Teddy Two Gloves, ooh, I like that name. That's a good one. 3,700 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Now, of course, Sam Darnold is in place of Teddy Two Gloves. Is this an upgrade?
I think so. At least Darnold is a more aggressive quarterback than Bridgewater, and clearly they being Matt Rule and Joe Brady weren't happy with the conservative nature of Bridgewater, and they clearly liked Darnold enough to have passed on Mac Jones, who they had with them for the week at the Senior Bowl. They were in position to draft him. I thought they probably would. But they didn't exactly give up, chicken scratch for Darnold either. It was a 2021 6th rounder, a future 2nd, and a future 4th. I think there's a lot to like about Sam Darnold. He has weapons around him. We're going to see if he can actually play the position. He's going to have McCaffrey there. He's going to have Anderson. He's going to have Moore. He's going to have Terrace Marshall. I think he's a sneaky quarterback 1 this year, and is a guy I've been targeting in Superflex leagues as my QB 3 or 4. But I believe in Sam Darnold.
I like what I see, and I like the situation he's in. He's got receivers, he's got a running back, he's got a competent coaching staff. There's a lot to like in Carolina with how the team looks right now.
And I think we forget that Darnold's still only 23 and has played his entire career with Adam Gase. There really is a lot to like, and as we said, he has those weapons. So worst comes to worst, and I think we've talked about this with a couple of other teams, is if he stinks, they're going to be picking at the top of the draft anyway. So it's not like they lose out. And maybe then Darnold is just a 1-year option for them. But I like him. He's the QB 30 at the moment in redraft one quarterback. But he's let's have a look at his Superflex ADP.
Yeah, he'll definitely be more relevant in Superflex than
for sure.
Than one quarterback.
I don't feel comfortable, trusting him week on week. But they'll have soft matchups. They play the Falcons twice.
Play the Falcons twice. That'll be that would be considered a streamable matchup, situationally based. Of course, it has to pan out that way, and we have to see Sam Darnold show us a little bit to make us trust him. But I mean, right now, Teddy Two Gloves, 15 touchdowns. That is immensely underwhelming with how they had 3 good receivers. Sam Darnold has to be able to throw for at least 25 to 30 touchdowns. It needs to be that much of an upgrade for me to sit there and go, yeah, that is a satisfying quarterback for me.
So his best season is 3,000 yards, 19 touchdowns, 13 picks. I think he surpasses all of those numbers, and in that I mean he throws fewer picks as well. But I think, we might see 4,000 yards, a couple of extra game, or an extra game, 20, maybe 25 touchdowns and 10 picks, something like that. I think would be good. He's got, he's not immobile in the pocket. I think he's got some decent rushing ability. At least I think he's got rushing touchdown upside, if not, proper rushing upside. So yeah, he's really attractive. He's going in the early 9th. In Superflex, which, if you're loading up on quarterbacks, he is your QB 3-4 that you can go for at that mark. Probably around the same time as Big Ben. I'd probably rather Big Ben slightly, but
he's definitely interesting.
Sign me up for Sammy Darnold.
He's an interesting character, interesting team, and it makes the wide receivers a little bit more interesting too. Because Robbie Anderson, he played well when paired up with Sam Darnold, and now Robbie Anderson is a receiver that I would really like to target. DJ Moore, he's going to be good. I'll take DJ Moore all day long also, but I'm more interested in Robbie Anderson. Can we get an ADP check?
Yeah, Anderson is currently the wide receiver 43 and going
such
in
a good
mid-9th round. Money for old rope. And yeah, he was hyper productive with Sam Darnold, and he's come out. I mean, we haven't done between the lines for a little while, but he came out and said, Sam Darnold's got more about him than when they last played together at the Jets. So no, I think, that connection's going to be great. And Anderson is a free agent after this year, so he'll be wanting to get himself a nice payday, whether that's with the Panthers or somewhere else.
Exactly. Now, Robbie Anderson, can we get a couple quick this or that's on him?
Yeah, for sure. Let's have a look at Robbie Anderson. So as you said, wide receiver 43, he is going, just sort this again by that. So wide receiver, Robbie Anderson or Curtis Samuel?
Robbie Anderson.
Robbie Anderson or Deebo Samuel?
Oh. Ooh, that's a tough one. Oh, that's a good one. Give me Robbie. I think the Niners are a little bit too run heavy for me.
I really like Deebo, but can't stay on the park. Best ability is availability.
Yeah.
Robbie Anderson or Deontay Johnson?
That's also a good one. Deontay likes to drop the ball a lot. You know what? I honestly trust Sam Darnold more than Ben Roethlisberger. Is that a hot take?
I don't think it's a hot take necessarily. I think I've got Big Ben just a shade ahead of Sam, especially this year with a bit more of a running game. But no, I think it's a reasonable call to make. We've talked about Off Pod as well, doing a tier breaks episode in a couple of weeks. But I think Anderson might be the last wide receiver 2 that you can get.
That's fair. Okay. Well, and one more, and let's hop on a DJ Moore after.
Robbie Anderson or Antonio Brown?
Robbie Anderson. There's just a lot of competition out there in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll get onto that. But no, Anderson seems like a home run pick there for me.
Fair enough. not DJ Moore?
I was going to say, and for a guy who is probably better known as a deep threat, he actually does a lot of his best work in the slot. They did a good job of getting the ball in his hands quickly. Obviously, Darnold has got a better deep ball than Teddy Two Gloves. So, we might see him a little bit more downfield. He did struggle to find the end zone a bit last year. But, he's a bit more flexible than, the 9 route guy we saw in New York. So you wanted some either-ors with DJ Moore.
Yeah. Now, the touchdowns in general, that team was lacking. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater with 15, and then the leader, which was Mike Davis with 8. Yeah, that team was lacking in touchdowns. I feel like touchdowns is an irrelevant stat now with the new quarterback at helm.
Remember when they started PJ Walker?
I do remember. I do remember
that was a weird week. Yeah. He, for those of you who remember, it was the XFL AAF star PJ Walker. He had 1 touchdown and 5 picks on the year. So, have fun heading back to the Rock. So, DJ Moore. DJ Moore or Adam Thielen?
Thielen.
I should say here, Moore is, you can get him in the early 5th round. He's the wide receiver 19. DJ Moore or Robert Woods?
Woods.
DJ Moore or Kenny Golladay?
Oh, that's a good one. Give me DJ Moore.
Yeah, I'll take Moore there too. DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett.
That's also a good one. Tyler Lockett, probably.
DJ Moore or CD's Nuts?
CD's Nuts.
Yeah, me too. Like a job interview.
Nice job.
DJ Moore or Kyle Pitts?
That's a good one. DJ Moore. Yeah, DJ Moore.
Yeah, I feel like we still haven't seen the best of DJ Moore on a consistent basis. He's an excellent player, but I don't think we've quite seen his ceiling yet. And again, he's a guy who's going to be a free agent at the end of this season, and to me, that's what makes Terrace Marshall so exciting for Dynasty Leagues, is because he is probably going to be the wide receiver 2 to either Anderson or Moore next year. But these guys are both going to be competing for that contract to stay in Carolina and, I suppose, ostensibly catch passes from a Sam Darnold in what should be a friendly offense moving forward. But yeah, I still don't think we've seen the best of Moore. He's definitely broken out, but I think there's some ceiling to come if they can unlock him, I suppose, with Darnold.
Yes. Now DJ Moore, you said he's taken in the 5th. Robbie Anderson's taken in the 9th. There is not much of a statistical difference. 100 yards and 1 touchdown, which is about 16 points total. Let's factor in about 7 receptions for 100 yards. So half-point PPR is 3. So there's about 20 fantasy point difference between the two from last year's stats. And there's a 4-round difference. Is it worth it to skip on DJ Moore and then take Robbie Anderson?
Oh, all day.
All day?
All day. The interesting one would be is if you decided to, I suppose, in Superflex, stack Darnold with Anderson.
That's definitely doable. That's doable.
But no, give me Anderson at that price all day. Moore, I like Moore. I just like the other guys around a bit more. You might even say
that's fair. I mean, DJ Moore, he's solid, but the 5th round, that's a little bit tough for me.
Yeah, I think he's fairly valued there. One guy that I suppose is a returning name is Christian McCaffrey, and he is still the 101 in a lot of leagues. He's in a lot of 1 QB leagues. Have you got any concerns about him?
Nah, he's 101 for a reason. He's a beast. He's the best pass catcher, best runner, best all-around player. Phenomenal. I mean, and now because he did have that major injury, he's not going to play 97% of the snaps. It might go to 85, but that's still that's RB1 numbers all day long. I'll take that. Give me that.
Yeah, they brought in Trouba Hubbard, who's a bit of a bigger body, who might be able to be that between the tackles thumper if needed and save McCaffrey on some of those short yardage situations. As you say, I don't think he's going to get 97% of the work. But I was reading today, PFF have the Panthers graded as the 2nd worst offensive line. They lost a bunch of names. They haven't really replaced them with anyone of note, although Braden Christensen should be a good player down the line. But they brought in Pat Elflein, gave him a huge contract, and I don't know, he couldn't block a single thing. I couldn't even think of an analogy there. But he was terrible last year. So do you have concerns about Darnold's ability to make plays down the field behind a bad offensive line? And what does that do for McCaffrey? Does it increase his value as a pass catcher?
It's tough to increase a wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2's pass value in the running back position. We could talk about bad offensive line needing Darnold to dump it off more. We could talk about a good offensive line making it so he can have the time to check down at McCaffrey, or a good offensive line creating better holes for McCaffrey to run. You could always turn an offensive line issue to benefit the RB in a way. I'm more interested. I like this in the notable arrivals that you wrote. You wrote Dan Arnold in the tight end position. And I completely thought that was a joke and a play on off Sam Darnold's name.
Nope. No, that's he is 100% a real person, Dan Arnold.
Dan Arnold.
Not to be confused with Tom Arnold.
There we go.
But I quite liked Dan Arnold. I thought he flashed a bit with the Saints way back when. And down the stretch for the Cardinals, I think he might have scored 3 touchdowns in 4 games, or 4 in 5 or something like that. But I think he has potential. He's essentially one of these big wide receivers playing tight end. They brought in Tommy Tremble to replace Chris Manhertz. But Arnold's 6'6", plays basically as receiver. I think he's going to be a weapon. Oh, there we go. I totally oversold what he did in Arizona. He had on the season last... Oh, hang on. No, I didn't. Sorry, I was looking at the year before. Let me get up his game log. Talk amongst yourselves, please, listeners.
Oh, so let's see. Dan Arnold, Sam Darnold. They literally just flipped the first letters of the name. So
Dan Arnold, week 10, he had 2 targets, 1 catch for a 4-yard touchdown.
Amazing.
Week 12, 2 catches, 2 touchdowns for 61 yards. And then he scored the next week as well. He had his season highs. He had 4 catches twice. He had 61 yards. So this is a guy who's moving into that position, room to grow, all of that jazz. But again, if you're in a tight end premium league, in a best ball league, especially, he would be a guy to target at the back end of your drafts, I would guess. But as we're talking about confusing names, and I think we've talked about this before, what's the potential for some David Moore, DJ Moore shenanigans on draft day?
I'm probably going to fall for it and mess it up. I mean, Yahoo has kind of made it, I don't want to say stupid proof, but it's definitely helped you out by like separating the ADPs, and when you click a name, it actually shows their full name. But there's definitely going to be somebody out there, and I hope it's in my leagues where somebody makes that mistake.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure he doesn't listen to the podcast, but talking about you, Danny, this will be something that happens to you.
God damn it, Danny.
And we will bully you. We will bully you for it.
Kenny's going to make that mistake, and we're going to kill him for it. So any closing remarks before we move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I think Carolina are perhaps the most unremarkable team in the league, but give me Anderson all day, give me Darnold, and I would love McCaffrey on my team.
Now Tampa Bay, 11-5 with a Super Bowl ring, 3rd in points scored, 7th in yards gained, 2nd in passing, 28th in rushing. Ronald Jones with 978 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Not that bad. Mike Evans continued his streak with 7 straight 1,000-yard games and 13 touchdowns. Yes, you said it right. 13 touchdowns. Tom Brady threw for 4,600 yards, 40 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. I mean, let's face it. You got Mike Evans, wide receiver 1. Godwin, wide receiver 1. And then you have Antonio Brown, who's probably back-end wide receiver 2. I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, I think so.
Right now, the only real question marks is the running back position. I feel like, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe it's a Brady thing more than a Belichick and Patriots thing, but I don't want a bar of this running. I don't want a bar of this backfield. I don't want the heartache. If you really feel like you need to throw a dart and try and get a piece of this, then by all means, but prepare that you might back the wrong horse. We've talked about in the past, you go the cheaper guy. The cheaper guy in this offense is Rojo, I think. Yeah, just. Rojo's the RB33 in the late 7th. Fournette the RB27 in the mid 6th. I think they're probably both better players than that, but I don't know how you trust them. And in fact, Evans scored 13 times, but you couldn't really trust him last season. He was having games where he'd have 2 catches for 2 touchdowns and 10 yards. They're Dan Arnold numbers.
Yeah, I don't think he puts up 13 touchdowns again. I don't think Mike Evans does 13 touchdowns again, but I don't think he does 1,006 yards on the dot again. I think he definitely scores around, he gains about 1,200, 1,300 yards and probably around 9 touchdowns. Now, that being said, Tom Brady's stat chasing right now. He has the rings. He has the accolades. He's going for the stats now. And that being said, he's going for the touchdown stats. And there was plenty of times last year where everybody and their mother knew that Ronald Jones, all he had to do was just jump over the pylon, move the ball an inch, and he could have had himself a little tutty. But no, Tom Brady went for the little slant to Mike Evans and made sure he got the stats to back up whatever accolades Tom Brady currently has.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a bit more of that. As you say, he's chasing Brees. I'm not quite as au fait with what records he has and doesn't have anymore, but I know he's chasing. I think he's chasing the yards and the touchdowns. So yeah, I think we're going to see him air it out. As you say, there's going to be games where, well, as always, even in New England, there'll be games where the running backs would punch it in. But I mean, Brady's Brady, and literally in the show notes, I couldn't work out how to phrase it as a question, so I literally wrote Tom Brady with a question mark, because he's shown no signs of slowing down. He's still Tom Brady. He's in the best offense. He's starting to sass people. He's calling people motherfuckers. He's just an old man who's moved to Florida and doesn't give a shit anymore. And he's trying to win as many rings, get drunk on as many boat parties as he can. And he has the weapons around him to do it. So, if you're drafting Brady, you know what you're getting. He's fucking Tom Brady. So I think it's probably more interesting to discuss the guys around him. So you can't talk about Brady without Gronk. So what are we expecting from him this year? He's the tight end 9 at the moment. He's going in the mid 8th. Do you want to touch him at that price?
Yeah. Gronk is going to get his touchdown looks. And at that point, that is good enough to crack the top tier ones in the tight end position. That's all you really need is just, hey, can you get touchdowns? Do you have the touchdown upside, touchdown potential? Good enough.
I liked him. I picked him up late in a lot of leagues last year. He did some good work. I think mid-8th is a bit rich. I don't think there's that much of a drop-off between Gronk at the tight end 9 and the people who probably finish somewhere 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th that you could probably get in your last pick, like I'm in the Furk.
Well, right now you're hoping for a tight end, a mid-tier tight end, you're hoping for, 4 catches, 50 yards, and, hoping for, half-point PPR, a 7-point stat line. Maybe you get lucky with a touchdown. With Gronk, all you need is 2 catches, a touchdown, and 15 yards, and you eclipse that stat line. And I'd argue that's probably easier to get.
Yeah, you could be right. And in fact, fun Gronk fantasy football fact, in the first ever league I played in, he went 101.
Really?
Yeah. I think that was the season he barely played. So we'll do some either ors with Gronk here. And this is not necessarily just tight end either ors. This is who would you rather see on your roster than Gronk.
Okay.
So no point asking about fucking Chenault. You hate him. Gronk or Will Fuller?
Will Fuller.
Gronk or Jarvis Landry?
Jarvis Landry.
Gronk or Matthew Stafford in one quarterback?
That's tough, but I'd go Gronk.
Gronk or Tyler Boyd?
There's too much disrespect on Tyler Boyd. Give me Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, I'm a big Tyler Boyd guy. Gronk or Mike Davis?
Mike Davis.
You can't tell me that your team looks better off with Gronk than Davis, can you? So
no, that's tough.
And the guys that are going later than him, I mean, we're talking Logan Thomas is going later, Robert Tunyon's going later. If you believe in Hunter Henry or Johnny Smith, they're going later. Tyler Higbee is going later. Even Evan Engram. I think there's just too much, not necessarily value, but there's not a gulf in class enough between Gronk and those guys. Gronk's not going to be that top tier tight end anymore. So I think you go with the value and stack those more valuable positions, even in tight end premium.
Well, I think Gronk has value. I'm going to have to agree with you right now. I think we mentioned this earlier. I don't know if it was last episode or a couple episodes ago, where if you do not get an elite tight end, don't bother with one into the later rounds. And I'm talking about 10 past later rounds. And at that point, I'd rather have Young Hoku than a tight end.
As we've been discussing this, the more I just don't want to bar of anyone in Tampa Bay on my roster. Not for the same reasons that I don't want any of the Jets, any of the Pats. I think it's just everyone is overpriced for what you're going to get. There's going to be weeks where they're going to be irrelevant. The only one I think is maybe undervalued is Antonio Brown, wide receiver 46 in the early 10th. And if you really believe that, he's, let's say, not Antonio Brown, as we've known him in the last couple of years, then
Mr. Big Chest, say it right.
Mr. Big Chest. I loved Mr. Big Chest as a nickname, and now he's Mr. Brady's guest. But if you believe in AB, I think that's excellent value. But the rest of them, I think, a bit like DJ Moore, this is fair value for Evans. He's the wide receiver 13. Godwin's the wide receiver 16. Those points I'd rather like your Keenan Allen's, Allen Robinson, where there's going to be volume guaranteed. The offense might not be as strong, but at that position, that is potentially your wide receiver 1 on your team. If you've gone heavy in other positions early, you want to know that you've got rolled gold stats there.
I think Mike Evans could still put up those raw gold stats. And I personally, I will put Keenan Allen over Mike Evans. I'll put, the other top tier receivers ahead of Mike Evans. But, when you have Harry Potter tattoos on your arm, he's going to have some witchcraft on you. And he's got that witchcraft on him.
I think Evans had a lot of shit the bed games last year. I'm just looking back at his game log. First week, or week 1 catch, 1 touchdown, 2 yards.
Amazing.
Week 3, two touchdowns, 2 catches, 2 yards.
Oh, amazing. That's a boner right there. Sorry.
This one, for the price you're paying for him, 5 catches, 41 yards, 1 touchdown. Now that's amazing. A startable week, but not great. And then he went 1 catch, 10 yards, no touchdowns, 2 catches, 37 yards, no touchdowns. He's got a 4 for 64 without there too. So, he has his big games. Back end of the year, he went lube free into Detroit with 10, 181 and 2. Lube free into the Chargers with 7, 122 and 1. But I just don't trust him. And this is another one of these guys. I'd rather miss out on him than take the risk. I like other guys at that price.
And he's very injury prone. He's always have that nagging hamstring injury. He always has a nagging ankle injury. And of course, he's always a game time decision. I'm going to have to agree with you. As much as I really like Mike Evans, I would rather somebody else make the choice to draft him.
Yeah, so we'll do some either-ors here. And for all of these names, you can assume I'm talking about Evans and Godwin, because they're basically going at the same.
That's fair.
The same values. So Julio Jones.
Ooh. I'll take Godwin, Julio, Evans.
Allen Robinson. Scary Terry McLaurin.
I'd rather have actually both Godwin and Evans over him.
Speaking of scary Terrys, how's Tamorion Terry getting picked up for felony murder? He was on the Seahawks practice squad. I quite liked his tape. Anyway, won't be seeing him.
I'm glad.
Amari Cooper.
Both of them over Amari.
Cooper Kupp.
Ooh. Kupp.
Keenan Allen. Yeah, so I don't want him. I don't want to bar of him. And at that price, you're also getting, I know you'll be more interested in your Chris Carsons, your David Montgomerys, and even in one quarterback, I think you could make an argument for a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson at that price too.
That's fair. I'll take them. I'm not happy about it, but I'll take them.
Yep.
That's fair. All right. So any last remarks before we hit onto the Saints? No pun intended.
Look, probably not. I'd be interested to see if OJ Howard has anything in the tank, but stay away from it at the draft. Hopefully Gio Bernard finds a role in that offense as well.
Doubt it. But all right. So the New Orleans Saints, 12-4. No Drew Brees, 5th in scoring, 12th in yards gained, 19th in passing yards, 6th in rushing yards. Alvin Kamara, 932 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, and 6 of them came against me in the fantasy championship. Yes. So fun fact, actually. So I joined 5 fantasy leagues last year. I set a limit to myself to 5. So I did 5. I was in the championship in 3 of them. I played Alvin Kamara in all 3 of them. Guess how many of those championships I won?
None.
I won none of those championships. Yep. Alvin Kamara, specifically Alvin Kamara, ruined 3 of my championships. And one of them, I finished 3rd place. And then the last one was Dynasty, and I was kind of semi-tanking that year. So, I mean, we don't talk about that one. So, I mean, what turned into a potential phenomenal fantasy year turned into an utter disaster because Alvin Kamara decided to score 6 touchdowns on the depressing, degrading, terrible Minnesota Vikings. Oh, God, that haunted my dreams for a couple of weeks, and it still frustrates me.
Yeah, he ruined the lone one I was in as well. But funnily enough, it was Christmas Day. And it had been a big day in the Arnott household. I had nearly taken my finger off on a mandolin in the morning. I'd lost quite a lot of blood and then had drunk basically my body weight in sparkling Shiraz and port at that point. So I wasn't sure if I was dreaming that Kamara had scored that many touchdowns. I couldn't tell you what was happening, but looking at the stats today as I was compiling the show notes, I tell you what, after getting him in Scott Fishbowl in the 2nd round, it was like I was walking into a job interview. I was that excited.
There we go. I like to see it, and I'm sure it was immensely Garthy. So 16 rushing touchdowns. All right, so there's going to be regression there, right? He had 1,688 scrimmage yards. So he's getting close to that 2K mark, 21 total touchdowns. So he had, let me do my math properly, 5 receiving touchdowns, 16 rushing touchdowns. There's going to be regression there, all right? You're not scoring 6 touchdowns a game. You're not having an elite stat line without Drew Brees, because when we saw a sample size without Drew Brees there, it wasn't pretty.
No, it wasn't. And that's the real concern, isn't it, is what happens with him and who's under center. But the offense runs through Alvin Kamara. We've seen it in Carolina with Christian McCaffrey. We've seen it with a bunch of teams over the years. I think that Kamara has a chance to go 1,000 and, probably score in that, 12 to 20 range of touchdowns. I know that's quite broad, but it wouldn't surprise me if he averages over 100 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown each week. The Saints are still going to be a good offense no matter who's under center, and he's the centerpiece of it. They've still got a sick O-line too. They've just re-signed Ryan Ramczyk, Terrell Armstead. Terrell Armstead is still there. So I think it's all signs pointing up for Kamara, or Kamara, or however he pronounces his name.
Yes, but there was too much of a difference in quarterback play. It's related to his fantasy production for me to sit there and go, yes, I'm okay with this. So right now, Alvin Kamara, he's going probably 102, 103-ish, 104.
It'll be about that. I sort of blanked out the fact I could just look this up for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so he's the RB3, the number 3 overall at the moment.
I'll take Derrick Henry over him. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Henry's the RB4. Who are those others? The top 7 are at this point. Where do you have Kamara?
McCaffrey, Cook, Henry. After that, let's see. Come on, give me a list of names. Tell me out here.
Saquon.
No, I'll take Kamara over Saquon.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
No, I'll take Saquon over Jonathan Taylor.
Nick Chubb. Nick the job interview Chubb.
There we go. I like that one. I'll take Nick Chubb over Jonathan Taylor.
And Zeke.
I think I'll take I think I'll take Jonathan Taylor over Zeke. And I think Zeke is still, while an elite RB, I'm putting him in the back end of that list.
And in fact, I'll give you two here. These aren't necessarily either or for the draft, but probably who has a better finish to the season, Alvin Kamara or Aaron Jones?
Are we assuming Aaron Rodgers is playing?
Assume whatever you like.
Okay, well, I assume he's not playing, so therefore, Alvin Kamara.
And Austin Eckler.
I like Austin Eckler a lot. I just think he's a Walmart version of Kamara, so I got to go Kamara.
Yeah, we'll save that for I can't believe it's not Josh Allen, because that was basically the conceit of the entire segment. It was, here's a name, who's the Walmart version of them? So thanks for ruining that, Dodds.
Well, maybe I just brought a little teaser, a little preview of that segment.
Yeah, I think it's like a backdoor pilot for the segment next week. So if it is so quarterback dependent, and to be honest, I think it's going to be a case of, if he's not getting involved, they're going to have to get him involved. Like, you're not going to pay him that money. He's the best offensive player they have. So I don't think they're going to cop a week where he doesn't get a target, isn't running the ball, because what's the value of that? Their best chance to win is give the ball to Alvin Kamara. But be that as it may, who's the quarterback? Doesn't matter for Kamara, doesn't matter for Michael Thomas.
It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It is a downgrade for Kamara, whether it's Tyson Hill or whatever his name, Tyson Hill, or Jameis LASIK Winston. I mean, I would rather have Winston as my quarterback than Tyson Hill if I'm a Kamara owner, but neither of them bring me comfort as a Kamara owner if I have him. Because, I mean, it's not like Winston checks down. Winston doesn't check down. He'll throw a pick before he checks down.
That almost sounds like the little known sequel to Dunstan checks in, Winston checks down.
There you go. I mean, if you ask Winston, he'll tell you life is too short to check down, and he lives that. He lives that motto, and he lived it every day of his life out there in Tampa Bay. So, I mean, maybe a philosophy change, maybe coaching change, scheme change will help him out a little bit, but I'm just not confident as a Kamara owner.
I think, I tend to agree. I think Winston's going to be a better quarterback for the Saints. I think he's going to be a better quarterback for Kamara. I think they're going to have packages for Hill. They might even have games with Hill. But, Winston is got to learn, and hopefully is learned, to be a quarterback with more longevity in the league. You can't just keep your fuck it and chuck it attitude, because that's not worked for him. Sean Payton is not as cavalier as Bruce Arians. The Saints actually care about how well they do, as opposed to Tampa Bay in the Winston era. So I think we're going to see Winston lower his LASIK'd eyes and work more on those middle routes, the shorter routes, pick out Kamara, pick out Michael Thomas, and become a better quarterback, which in turn is going to open up his deep ball as well. That being said, I don't want to borrow either him or Hill in any of my leagues, which is concerning because I own him in quite a lot of dynasty leagues. But we touched on Michael Thomas there, or I touched on Michael Thomas there. What do you think it is for him? He's just come off the board in the Scotty Fish Bowl to my arch nemesis, the fantasy footballers, at the 403. How the mighty have fallen here. He's not going to see that same value, but do you think he's still an elite NFL receiver?
You got to give him the respect of an elite NFL receiver. The scheme might change, the quarterback might change, but I mean, Michael Thomas will always get open on that slant route. You just got to throw it to him.
Yep.
I really hope they do.
Yeah, I mean, he's the wide receiver 9 at the moment. Early third round.
I think that's too high, though. I wouldn't take him there.
No, because I think at that point you've either gone for, you've probably gone running back and then a wide receiver in the second round, and then you might come back for a Harris, Gibson, Josh Jacobs, Edwards-Helaire rather than taking Michael Thomas, because I don't think, you could have double tapped it at running back early, in which case you might load up at running back. Thomas is sort of in a bit of no man's land between the absolute, who I think rolled gold, elite wide receiver ones this year, your AJ Browns, your Justin Jeffersons, and those guys who are probably likely to put up similar points but a bit more value in your Keenan Allen, your Julio Jones, your Evans, your McLaurins, these sorts of guys. So, yeah, maybe it is hands off for Michael Thomas.
Right, let's see. Let's give a quick scenario. If I'm the 7th pick, I take Jonathan Taylor first overall, and then I go like Austin Eckler, 2nd pick on the turn, And then third round, I'm probably looking at Keenan Allen. I don't think I'd be looking at Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is going to be a zero RBs type receiver where you took Tyreek Hill and then after that, maybe Devontae Adams, and then you circle around for like Michael Thomas, and then you start looking at RBs.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose if that was your strategy, you could get Thomas as your third and then come back for any number of those running backs that we've just mentioned there. Or even Darren Waller.
Darren Waller is definitely an option. I think I'd rather have Darren Waller over Michael Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's certainly an argument for that. I'm not a Darren Waller truther by any means. I think he's a fine player. He's just a guy I don't think I'm ever going to own for no real good reason. But we talked about Kamara, we talked about Thomas, we talked about Taysom Hill, we talked about Winston. Is there any value in any of their second team players? I'll read out their names and you can tell me if there's anything worth looking at deeper here. So Traquan Smith.
I'm not going to invest in him. There's potential. The Saints have never supported two wide receivers, but of course this is with Drew Brees. Now with Jameis Winston, we might see a Mike Evans Godwin type situation where Traquan is the Evans, Michael Thomas is the Godwin type thing. I'm not going to put my eggs in that basket though.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm not even sure he has that job as the wide receiver too come the middle of the season. A guy I'm a big fan of, but I just don't think it's ever going to happen for him in a fantasy sense. Deontay Harris?
No, I'm good.
I think if they weren't going to get him more involved last year with Brees unable to throw past the end of his nose, I don't think it's going to happen this year. Latavius Murray.
Best handcuff you could probably own.
Yep. A guy I really liked when I watched him play and have on some of my deeper dynasty leagues, Marquez Callaway.
No, I'm good.
I don't think I'm touching him in redraft, but he's who I think might end up as their wide receiver too by the end of the season. I think he showed a bit. And a popular later tight end, Adam Troutman.
Cool name, but no. He's going to be on the waivers. You're going to have to pick him up mid-year if he ends up being phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't want to borrow him. Once again, I'm struggling to find players I do want on this team.
It's, they got a lot of big names. But with Drew Brees, arguably one of the best quarterbacks to ever play, well, he's gone. It leaves uncertainty, and it's fair. It's just like Devontae Adams. I mean, Aaron Jones, Tunyon, without the best quarterback, there's uncertainty, and it makes it difficult.
I mean, to be honest, I think Rodgers comes back. I'm sure we'll talk about that in the NFC North episode. But yeah, there is just so much uncertainty. If, let's say, gazing into crystal ball here, let's say Taysom Hill wins the job, where do you have him as a quarterback?
He's got upsides. I'll put him over Justin Fields, around that vicinity.
Do you like Hill or Jalen Hurts? I feel like they're a similar
I'd rather have Hill, mostly because he's on a better team.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's pull another one. Hill or, in fact, sight unseen at the moment, Hill or Trey Lance?
Hill. Yeah. I've seen enough of Hill as a runner to score rushing touchdowns for me to give him the edge there.
What about Hill or Cam Newton?
Hill.
Yeah, fair. Well, I think that's sort of it for the Saints. It's probably worth noting they did draft Ian Book, who I think might have potential to be a long-term option there, but it's not really worth anything in redraft.
No, that's tough. I mean, right now we're kind of patiently waiting and seeing if there's any breakouts, and then I'll be quick to spend fab or waiver claim on somebody on the Saints because typically they don't have too many 1 week wonders.
Yep.
Usually, once you're effective and efficient in that offense, you're stuck on that offense. Sean Payton always finds a way to put the best players out there, and I trust him for that.
Yep.
But right now, I'm just going to watch and wait. I'll let somebody else make the mistake. If he makes a mistake, congrats for my fantasy team. If he makes a good play, hey, good for him. And I'll see him in the championship.
Yeah.
And then he might score 6 touchdowns on me.
Yeah, I think maybe that'll be the big takeaway for both the Saints and the Bucs might be guys to watch on waivers rather than anywhere else.
Well, the Buccaneers have a little bit more certainty. I mean, it's kind of which one of the 3 receivers have a big game, but
True.
one of the three
True.
receivers is going to have big games. The only reason I think waivers are going to be active on the Buccaneers is if there's an injury on that roster.
Yeah, I suppose you're probably right there. But then again, it is getting close to 3:00 in the morning here, and I think my brain's started to shut down. I'll leave you with this though on the Saints before I guess we say good night or goodbye. Ian Book sounds like the most made up name in the NFL at the moment. It's like someone's got my name is Ian Book because they had a book in front of them. So yeah, good way to end that little chat.
Actually, right now, I think the coolest name is Lil Jordan Humphreys.
Yeah,
who is, I think, on the practice squad for the Saints.
Yeah, he's on the Saints. Well, he's a guy who might actually hit and stick on the roster, but he's actually we didn't touch on this, and maybe we can wrap up with a little bit of news because he's a sort of a low key favorite. Is Lil Jordan Humphrey is like a big slow receiver who can't separate, despite how great his name is.
He has the coolest name I've ever seen for an NFL player. 6'4" guy, 23. I mean, he did, ironically enough, he played one game, scored a touchdown in one game, and then got released and sent to the practice squad the week after that, which I always thought was a little funny. I thought, he'd start creeping his way up to fantasy relevance. And then right when he did, he kind of got shot right back down.
Do you think that maybe the fact his name is Lil Jordan is a detractor for coaches? If his name was just Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's
pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Locked and loaded starter.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe he's one to watch. Maybe we can have like Keeping Up with Lil Jordan or something.
Keeping Up. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we sign off, I don't know if you caught wind of this, but one of our favourites, N'Keal Harry, has requested a trade from New England.
Oh yeah.
2 questions for you: is anyone interested, and does he go for more than a conditional 7th?
Yeah, because he's first round talent, supposed first round talent, and he was a first round pick. He's going to demand a little bit more respect than that. He goes for around a 5th or 4th. I think he goes for that.
I think it's going to be like maybe a 6th. Where do you reckon he ends up?
Let's see, what's a wide receiver need a team? The Seahawks, for some reason, the Seahawks are always contenders for wide receivers.
Yeah,
it just works out that way. The Niners, now this is a rumor, the Niners released a couple of players. Maybe they're making roster room for it, or maybe they're just kind of trimming the fat. I could see the Packers going for a receiver. That's an oddball, maybe to somehow lure or repel Aaron Rodgers away.
I think he reunites with Nick Caserio in Houston in that dumpster fire offense. I think that'd suit our boy N'Keal. But as I tweeted, if he's looking for a trade, I'd take up carpentry if I was him.
I saw that tweet like right as soon as you logged on, so I couldn't like it in time. But don't worry, I got you on it. I'll give you even a retweet. Yeah. I mean, you didn't even retweet my tweet, but I'll still give it back.
I think I retweeted something you tweeted yesterday.
I don't know about that one. I think I saw a like, but that's about it.
We'll get the loving happening. Don't you worry.
All right.
Don't you worry, listeners. There's no trouble in paradise here.
Of course, I am Nader alongside Sheahan. You could find me at TopTierTactics _ on Twitter. Sheahan, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, I'm at Sheahan Solo on Twitter. My latest article went up today talking about Jeff Lynne, talking about the Travelling Wilburys, and talking about some underappreciated fantasy players. So if you can put up with my rambling nonsense, then I would get stuck into that because I think it's probably a pretty decent article. But come over. We'll be doing some Scotty Fishbowl stuff there and some of this other crap that we tend to do. But if you feel like that you're getting an experience that is better than not paying for it, then you can head on over to Patreon at patreon.com/sleeperwire and chuck in $1 over there. But you can also see all the great content from our team of writers. We have a lot of excellent young people coming through there, and we've got a mock draft article coming up later this week. So see what our writing team and also NFL.com's Marcus Grant did in a mock draft later this week.
There we are. And of course, the Sleeper Wire show at Twitter to stay up to date with all the news and releases that the team puts out there. But other than that, hey, Sheahan, you have a send off for everybody?
Wear a condom.
There we go. That's
to a job interview.
Other than that, Good luck, everybody.